If you struggle with poaching in doubles, this is the video for you. If you're like a lot of the people that I coach, you lack confidence in this area, and that's mainly for two reasons. Number one, you don't really know when you should be poaching. And number two, you don't know how to poach, so the footwork and the positioning involved. So let's get started with when is a good time to poach. As always, this is generically speaking. I know we can find exceptions to every rule, but situation number one is basically the first point or early on in the match. So if I were to ask you where you normally hit your first return, most people out there will say cross court or through the middle. You're just trying to make a return and get a feel for the match. And so me as your opponent knowing that, I'm going to poach right off the bat. So 90% of the time, I'm going to get that ball. But even if you are the exception and you decide to return down my line, that's okay. I've still set a precedent now that I'm going to be a menace in the middle of the court, and you're going to have to think about me moving forward. So scenario one is I like to poach very, very early in the match. Scenario two is I like to poach early in the point. So that would be off a first serve, a return, or a serve plus one. So again, for the same reason, off a good first serve, I usually get a weaker ball that I can move on, or maybe a good second serve return. Most people hit their plus ones cross court. But as the rally goes on, I can't really tell you where most people hit their third, fourth, or fifth ground strokes. And by then, alarm bells are going off in their head. The point is long, and they're just itching to do something, which generally speaking could be going down the line. So a lot of times if my players haven't poached on the first or second ball, I kind of tell them, hey, maybe we should just sit this point out and we'll wait for the next point to be super aggressive. So early in the point is also a great time to poach. The third time to poach would be when the score is close. So human psychology, most people tend to play a little more conservatively on big points. So let's say it's 4-all deuce. I don't think that returner is going to go, you know what? I think that down the line alley looks delicious right now. I think they're going to try to make the return, and that's safe middle or cross court. So guess where I'm going to be? Right in the middle of the box looking for that ball. On the flip side, if the score is not important, so let's say I'm up 4-2, 40 love serving, there's a good chance that person is just going to treat that point with little value and try to hit a winner down the line. So when the points don't have value, I tend to stay because opponents typically play riskier. And when the points are close, I tend to move a little bit more. The fourth thing you need to consider is your opponent. And so while those are three general rules that usually work pretty well, they don't work all the time. And so when you're playing your opponent, you're trying to get in the psychology and the mindset of what they're thinking. And I'll give you an example. If I give these principles to some of my teenage kids, some of them think they know it all. They've already learned the game of tennis. And so when I'm telling them this and we do drills to demonstrate poaching, what I find is, and what I would guess, is they're going to try to prove me wrong and go down my line early. So when I do doubles drills against my players, I tend to fake and stay very early, knowing they are more prone to go down the line. So again, it just depends. Sometimes you'll play an opponent and they will hit every return down the line. Great, then just stay. Sometimes you'll play someone and they have a technical deficiency and they catch every ball late inside out. And I would say poach every time, regardless of the situation. So we have our principles, but we also have to react to the individual opponent that we're competing against. So now that we know some basic parameters for when's a good time to poach, I'm going to teach you how to poach. But before I do, if you're enjoying this video already, I would really appreciate you liking and subscribing. I've had a lot of views on my videos lately, and I really appreciate whenever you take the time to like or subscribe to the channel. So let's talk about the first thing, and that's most people tend to protect their line. So they're a little farther over here than I would like. And the problem is now they have to run even farther to get that poach, which means if they have to run farther, they have to leave earlier. The earlier leave, the more your opponent can see you and beat you down the line after they've seen you move. So rule number one is I like to have you basically in the middle of the box or 55% towards the middle and 45 times the sideline. So I would want to be at least right here. If you watch old videos of me playing, I'm probably even farther, but this would be where I start. From here, my footwork is very simple. As the ball is going towards my opponent, I leak forward a step or two, and right before they hit, I just make this little pivot move right here. Okay, most of the balls that you're going to poach are going to cross through this window. Now I'm going to show you an overhead view in a little bit what those angles look like, but that's the area of the net I have to cover, about 4.5 feet to each side. So I don't have to run across. A lot of people just take off running this way. They can get some awkward balls in the middle of the court or just not get the ball. So what I like to do is I start in the middle, I see that ball, one step forward, and I have my foot open so that if they hit to me right here, I can simply hit a volley. And if they hit a really good cross court, I'm ready to push and get all the way over here. And with that footwork, I can effectively cover the entire court that I'm poaching on. but also they don't read what I'm doing. Some people just like to run on an angle this way. That's very obvious what my intentions are. So as the ball is going to them, I'm moving forward. Right before they start their swing, I give my little pivot, and I can be balanced for the close one or stretch for the far one. So I'm actually going to show you now from the overhead angle what their cross-court angles look like and how little you actually have to move to get that poach. All right, so we have the overhead view of the court, and hopefully you will be able to see the angles a little better from here. If I'm in the middle of the box, and I want you to visualize, hopefully I can actually create the graphic of someone who's wide in the doubles alley, okay? If I put the ball on the single sideline, you got to see where that crosses the net is going to be somewhere in this range. This is where we talked about earlier. So if I'm poaching when they're actually wider in the court, I really don't have to move at all. I can just close in a straight line, and I'm going to be picking off most of what they have. And because I haven't really run to the middle, I can still take a step and cover my singles court. Remember, I never really want you covering your down the line alley in a one-up, one-back situation. So again, when they're wider and you want to poach, really all you have to do is close in a straight line. Now, let's say someone's hitting a ball from the middle of the baseline. So the net person over here is not watching my YouTube videos. They let a ball go, and my opponent is hitting the ball from the middle. Now, when we hit to that same target, that ball probably is crossing right around here. And so again, using that same footwork, I see them in the middle, I close forward. At the last second, I make my little pivot. If they hit it through the middle, I'm fine. And with one step, I'm gonna be able to get here. So the angles definitely change based on where they are in the court. But generally speaking, again, the biggest issue is people see these balls and they want to just start running across as if this is where you have to get to hit a poaching volley. If you're ever getting a ball here, that ball is going to be way wide of the doubles alley. So middle of the box, we're reading the situation. If they're wide, we're looking somewhere here. If they're T, we're about 4.5 feet on the other side, but it's just that same footwork right here, middle of the court. And again, you're giving them a small angle target and a small line target to hit winners. Other than that, you're there. So you're looking to put a lot of pressure on your opponent by knowing the angles and poaching more often. So hopefully after watching this video, you know when to poach and how to poach. And just remember, like anything, it takes thousands of reps. So you're not going to go in your next match and be a US Open champion poacher. But as long as you are poaching and thinking about these concepts, you will be improving. And I promise you, a couple months from now, you're going to be picking off balls you never did before, and you're going to start to see the effect it has on your opponent. They're going to start missing more ground strokes wide and missing more ground strokes in general because you're being a menace up there. So keep these 2 tips in mind, poach more often, and see if it helps you in your next doubles match.